Hello. Let's talk about what comes next. So, I watched the Trump campaign press conference, and there's enough evidence there for the Supreme Court to nullify the absentee or the mail-in and absentee ballots in at least 6 states. So, the legal the legal case has been made. And as they said, that was just their opening statement. As predicted, the press, only Fox News showed the press conference, and they tore it apart because they said there was no evidence presented. And sworn affidavits are evidence. So this shows you that, okay, a combination of complete dishonesty and ignorance of how anything works, means that this is the predicted outcome. There's a show here that I listened to for 20 years, and I had to stop because it's clear that the hosts have been bought off, and they were just saying the same thing. They presented no evidence, and the lawyers made it clear that in an opening argument you don't make the case, and they're only giving the press an opening argument. They're not required to give the press the hard evidence, and uh, you know there's a pretty strict deadline timeline for all of this. So the arguments being made against Trump's legal team are all bad faith arguments, and it's all entirely predictable because if the Democrats were smart, they wouldn't have tried this because it can't succeed for a number of reasons. The good news for us is that Trump won in a landslide, and that means that the country has its head on straight. So we don't have to worry about the country anymore. And you know, I predicted Trump would get 400 plus electoral votes, and the number I'm hearing tossed around is 400 plus electoral votes, and I think that's true. Um, but it was entirely, I mean, the press was going to say there's no evidence, so we're not going to cover it. And as Trump's legal team pointed out, they're lying. They're totally corrupt. And the fact that the Democrats went ahead with this and tried frantically to make up, you know, I don't know what, at least a million vote deficit, shows you how much was riding on this. That um, I mean, they were willing to take this suicidally stupid chance because essentially, okay, they were had. They believed the polls for whatever reason, and they thought all they were going to need was what the Dominion voting machines were intended to do is switch votes here or there. But as Sidney Powell said, that the magnitude of Trump's victory it broke the algorithm. So they had to make up the difference with physical ballots, mail-in ballots, and absentee ballots. And so what the Supreme Court will do, if the Supreme Court, I mean, as of right now, the Supreme Court would rule that the mail-in ballots and the absentee ballots in those states are too corrupted to count and they have to be nullified. So Trump is going to win those 6 states no matter what. But, okay, I was born in Venezuela, and I had Venezuelan and American citizenship until I was 18, so I get to say whatever I want about Venezuela. Um, I didn't anticipate that Dominion would be as stupid as they turned out to be, but it makes sense for authoritarian governments. So the great weakness of Dominion is that it's completely centralized, and that's a piece of cake to get the real information from. Now, I've linked a video below, and it shows what a private citizen can do. So, a private citizen was able to use the security cameras, and I've seen them also use the computers of scammers in order to show their faces. Now, the Israelis did this a while back when Anonymous was going after Israel, and so a completely shadowy group of Israeli hackers showed all these members of Anonymous, and you know, using their own computers. That's what private citizens can do. So, because from what I've gathered listening to Trump's lawyers, there is a count of the actual votes, and so they had to stop everything and make up the difference plus more. So that means they knew how many votes there were, and that's game over because I don't know if the NSA would even be necessary here. The NSA has the ability to get information from any machine that's hooked up to the internet. And the shocking thing about this is that the whole vote stealing system is hooked up to the internet. So it has a massive vulnerability. And what I think they figured was that they were the masters of the universe and nobody would break into their system. Well, Trump's lawyer said, the FBI is asleep at the wheel, the CIA, whatever. I can't I can't say anything about the CIA and the FBI, but I can say that there's absolutely no doubt if we add everything up, okay, um, the uh, the votes went overseas, so Trump would not need any kind of legal authority. He wouldn't have to go to a court in order to so that he could order a military operation to seize to essentially break into the Dominion, whatever you'd call it, the central hive mind that was controlling all of this. The DIA, I've been doing research on the Defense Intelligence Agency, and they have technical capabilities that are pretty much on a par with those of the National Security Agency. So, The National Security Agency, it's in a gray area. Um, I don't know if they would be required. I don't know if you would need like some kind of authorization to get the raw data or whatever, but I definitely know that since this is a national security issue, Trump was within his authority, especially given the fact that we're in a national state of emergency. He was well within his authority to order the Defense Intelligence Agency to get into the system. They knew the background of. I know that Giuliani and Sidney Powell say that they themselves didn't know the background of all of this. And that makes sense because nobody's really looked into it. But you can bet that Trump did. And once they found out, you know, who created Dominion, who's behind it, and all of that, it becomes a national security issue. And so he orders a military operation headed by the DIA to get the real vote count. And who knows what new technology we have that was invented by Israel, for example, or the Saudis. So the Saudis, and the Israelis have been in partnership since 2007, and it's not a case of the Israelis doing everything for the Saudis. The Saudis fund everything, but part of the partnership is that, you know, Israel help the Saudis develop their own capabilities. So we're seeing that the globalists who say that we're turning against our allies, these people aren't our allies. I know we have a special relationship with the UK, and the UK isn't an ally anymore. It's, you know, uh, it's too decrepit. You know, Boris Johnson was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and so um, just about the only people in the world we can trust right now are the Israelis and the Saudis, especially after everything that Trump has done for Israel. So I was looking into the Defense Intelligence Agency, and um, they have a public-private relationship where they encourage companies and individuals to approach them with solutions, as they're known, and essentially they are a full spectrum agency that is able to handle all uh, uh, technological exchange of information. So if we think about Ezra Cohen Watnick, he was a member of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he was a member of the Defense Clandestine Service, and nobody knew this. Think how many other Ezra Cohen Watnicks there are out there. We don't know about them. The only reason we know about this Ezra Cohen Watnick is that he came out of the shadows. And it's quite interesting that he's now referred to as Ezra Cohen. So, I don't know. I remember when people first started trying to figure out who he was, they were saying that his real name is Ezra Cohen. So, if you look at the Defense Department video that I linked to in yesterday's video, he's introduced as Ezra Cohen. So, you know, we still don't know much about this man, and that's a really good thing. Um, For every Ezra Cohen there are, there is, for every Ezra Cohen there's what, 5 or 6 or 10,000 more. So, I don't know anything about Dominion. It wouldn't be all that necessary. Dominion got its software from Smartmatic, but Smartmatic is sort of out of the picture, and it's all Dominion right now because, as Trump's lawyer said, it was Dominion executives who showed up to run all these operations personally. But the great weakness is that they were all this information was being sent to a central hub, and the hallmark of the third world and authoritarians is centralization, and it's their great weakness. If we were ever to go to war against a totalitarian regime, then we would win because they are completely centralized. Hitler lost the Second World War because he was the supreme commander, and he didn't know what the hell he was doing. He made horrendously bad decisions that cost the Germans everything. And by the end of the war, his generals were blatantly disobeying his orders because there's no point. He had this fight to the last man order. Well, they were losing all their best units, and what you do is you have a fighting retreat so that you preserve your forces. And Hitler was nuts. He was completely full of himself. He took all the butt kissing. It went to his head, and so he said, "I am a military genius." No, he wasn't. Um, he had no real military training. He was a corporal in World War One, and he was definitely courageous. He was a combat veteran. He was a runner, and he was wounded by shrapnel, and he was gassed. So he was a physically courageous man, but he brought a corporal's mindset to running a country. And you know, um, there's some people like Mohammed bin Salman who has zero military training, but like Trump, he takes his business acumen and he applies it. Jared Kushner does the same thing. Um, in a certain sense, everything is a business transaction, even a war. Um, so if you're a great business person, then you can lead a country much better than a professional politician or a general. Um, you have to be able to do cost benefit analyses, and that was how Trump won in 2016. And then he won this election because of his message. And there's absolutely no doubt that Trump has the goods on Dominion in the form of evidence that nobody will be able to ignore. And at some point, we're going to see the evidence. And the only question is when. I I think it would probably. Okay, I don't know. I don't know. I can't think like Trump. I've told you a million times. I can't predict what he's going to do. He figures out outcomes. Now, all of this had to happen because after after nobody can deny what happened, this is the draining of the global swamp. Sidney Powell is talking about, this is when you have the ability to steal elections worldwide, then, I mean, the reason there's so much disloyalty to the United States is that all these business interests, they're doing everything in their power to lean on the media companies, to not to not lend any credence to the idea that the election was stolen. So Trump isn't relying, he would never just rely on, okay, in this case, he would have to rely on the press to get his story out. No. So he's got hard evidence, and it's hard evidence in the form of, you know, um, using the systems inside the headquarters of Dominion, and we'll get to see them on camera saying, holy crap, he's got X amount of votes. We need to somehow come up with this. Shut her down. Shut it all down. We're going to see that. And if it was a military operation, then Trump will introduce whoever was in charge of it, and that military person will come out, hopefully in combat dress, and explain what happened. And that goes the final. I knew today when I listened to my former favorite radio talk show, I knew exactly what they were going to say. They're talking about Giuliani profusely sweating. And they said, Giuliani's crazy. He's making all these accusations with no evidence. He's lost his mind. And these guys are bought off. They're smart. They understand. They know how things work. But they were bought off. And for most people, it becomes easier to be corrupt the richer you get, because it doesn't impact you personally, regardless of the president and the president's policies don't impact you personally. You're going to get your money no matter what. So if they pressure you and they say, well, maybe we're going to cancel you, then you just do what they say. And these guys are their shtick is cynicism. So they say the world was never going to get better anyway. So, and Trump is a charlatan, and all this crazy stuff, and it just proves that they were bought off. And the everybody's in too deep now, and Trump anticipated this, so he's got hard evidence. And again, I'm not predicting what Trump would do. I asked earlier, and it was interesting because Donald Trump Jr. wrote in all caps, show all the evidence. And I'm not, he did follow me on Twitter, but I'm not egotistical enough to think he's watching my videos. But if I ask the question, what will Trump do? And he shouts back, show all the evidence, the implication is he will show all the evidence. Now, in my own limited mind, my completely non-Trumpian mind, it would make sense to let the country digest, let the press debunk all of this, and then give a presentation, because the presentation will only help the Supreme Court make its decision. And it would be a hell of a knockout blow. It would be a hell of a knockout blow. And the final thing I'll say is Trump had the authority to authorize a mission to get this information from Dominion, given our votes were being sent overseas. So this is not a political issue. It's a national security issue. And both Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani have emphasized that point. So I hope Trump, well, okay, I can't say I hope that he does show the evidence before they take it to the Supreme Court because maybe there are downsides that I can't figure out. I don't know. But I can guarantee you that Trump does have the evidence. So again, watch all 4 videos. I'm linking only the first one, and the guy has linked the other 3. Look what a private citizen can do. Now, just imagine what the Defense Intelligence Agency can do. So in conclusion, I am absolutely positive that Trump authorized a military operation in order to penetrate Dominion and get incontrovertible evidence that he can present to the country, that a military officer can present to the country, that will erase all doubt about what happened. So, there you go. Click.